One organization in New Jersey is giving back in a very different way by strengthening and empowering families who are dealing with the loss of a loved one. With me now is Evelyn Moon of the nonprofit Good Grief. What was the inspiration behind Good Grief?
So back in 2003, there was a group of concerned volunteers who realized there was an increasing lack of consistent and high-quality grief support programming for children and families. So they came together and started Good Grief actually in a church basement in Summit. We quickly outgrew that space and then moved to our Morristown location. And then about 10 years later, so in 2012, we moved to our Princeton location so that way we could serve more families across the state.
Grief is a very natural and universal part of the human experience. At the same time, it's something we're not always great talking about. It can be very difficult.
It is absolutely this universal thing. We will all go through it, but we are all so bad at talking about it. And we like to say it's just America, but I think it's everywhere. We don't like to be reminded of our own mortality, so sometimes it's difficult to be present with grievers. I think sometimes, especially with children, we're worried we might harm the child in some way by talking about it, by bringing it up. This was a study with New York Life. They said it takes about 6 years for grievers to feel like they're even starting to move forward with their lives, but support from family and friends wanes within about 1 to 3 months. And that's nothing malicious on the part of the people trying to support them. That's because, we move on with our own lives. Sometimes the person looks okay. We worry that bringing it up might harm them, so we just don't really know how to sit and make space for them.
Initially, your program focused on educating teachers and community groups, but over time, you've expanded your efforts to talk more directly to children and their families.
Well, the mission of Good Grief has always been focused on the child and the people around the child, but we have expanded our mission because we want to build resilience and empower communities to grow from loss and adversity. So that means building up the peer support, the adults in a young person's life, whether that's at school, mentors, caregivers, church communities, whoever those grown-ups are, but also building up the peer support, having kids their own age who understand, who are going through the same thing, because it removes that stigma and I think again creates that safe space for them to honestly just be kids. People come to our centers and they go, oh, this feels so sad, but there's so much joy. There's so much just kids being kids there. There's laughter. There's still, of course, all the other emotions and things that come with grief, but there's so much good that happens there as well. And we do work with schools. We want to empower school staff to feel confident and competent about grief-related anything, whether it's running their own grief groups, supporting a grieving child, interacting with parents of grieving kids. We want them to feel ready because it is something that they will come up against. Grieving kids are all around us, just sometimes we don't realize it. So our in-person programs are run out of our Morristown and Princeton locations. So what happens is a child anywhere from the age of 3 to 30 is eligible for our programming. We have anything from our youngest, which is our 3 to 5s, to our young adult groups. Also our parent, caregiver, the spousal loss, the child loss groups. Everybody gets separated into their own peer groups to receive their support. But families come to us and they receive completely free and unlimited peer support programming every other weeknight from September through June. So it follows the school year. We spend some time in our opening circle where they have the opportunity to say their name and the name of their person who died. So we want to keep their memory alive. We want to continue that bond. We want to make it okay for the kids in particular to talk about their person, knowing that that's welcome there. Then they go into their separate spaces. They're with their peers, generally the same people every week with their volunteer facilitators. And each week is focused on one of our themes. We have 10 program themes that all of our activities are built on. So everything is very intentional. We'll focus on things like building resilience, continuing bonds, the peer support, identifying healthy and unhealthy environments. We want to build up their adaptive skills, not just to navigate grief, but to meet all of life's challenges later on, any adversity. These are transferable skills that they are learning. Most families stay with us for about 2 years, but we've had families that have stayed as long as 10. As a child goes through all these different phases of life, they might need different types of support.
Tell me about the launch of your first satellite program. It's the In-Community program in Jersey City, and now you're even going beyond Jersey City to other cities such as Newark.
We've found that it can be very difficult for families in certain communities to find their way to our centers. Getting to Morristown, getting to Princeton, logistically can be very, very difficult. So what can we do to empower a community to run their own grief groups, without having to open a new center? We find that it's more sustainable. There's more opportunities for the community to really be invested and involved when we have volunteer facilitators that are in and of and for those communities with Good Grief, training them in how we do our grief support, our curriculum, things like that. We also have virtual support that began during COVID. Some people, either because of them being immunocompromised or just not comfortable, or even the convenience of having that Zoom space for them every other week, has been incredibly impactful.
Why is it even more important now to offer as great a support as possible to children and families who are suffering through a loss of a loved one?
They say that grief is this lifelong, nonlinear process. And those waves of grief can hit you at times that are completely unexpected. But I think there's also those times that you can kind of see coming. Anniversaries, birthdays, major milestones, but the holidays are also a big one. Coming from November through December, there are countless different celebrations and rituals and traditions that now there's an empty seat at the table. So I think a little bit of preparation can go a long way when you think about what this means. How can we adjust our rituals and our routines? Are there any that just feel not good and not right without this person? What's a new one that we could do? But I'd also say if you have a griever in your life, check in. So reach out, whether it's a text, a phone call. Think about how you could memorialize that person, whether it's making a favorite dish, ornaments that remember them, whatever it is that works for you, so that way you can remember this person at that time. And rather than shutting it out, finding ways to prepare, embrace, but also give yourself a little bit of grace, because it is hard. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Evelyn Moon of the nonprofit Good Grief. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.